Hello students, today we are going to speak about angina. Angina pectoris is caused by transient episodes of myocardial ischemia. So what is myocardial ischemia? That is lack of blood supply to myocardium, that is heart muscle, which leads to lack of oxygen and then it can lead to necrosis. So basically that is myocardial ischemia. So an imbalance in myocardial oxygen and oxygen supply and demand is the underlying cause of angina pectoris. So either now this imbalance can be caused either by increase in the myocardial oxygen demand, which for example occurs when there is increase in the heart workload of the heart. So when you are exercising or running, of course, what happens? Your body demands more and more oxygen for metabolism because the metabolism rises. And that time your heart has to pump more blood, oxygenated blood towards all your body organs. So in this condition, the workload of the heart increases. So in such conditions, if the increased oxygen demand is not met, then the person will suffer from angina pectoris. Or there will be decrease in the myocardial oxygen supply. Meaning this is your myocardium. These are the arteries, okay, which are supplying to your myocardium. You can see this network. And they are undergoing vasospasm, meaning constriction. That can lead to less oxygen supply. So at normal physiological conditions, when there is no increased metabolism, no increased oxygen demand, but your arteries are supplying less blood. So that can occur due to vasospasm or due to stenosis, or there is a plaque in the arteries. Here it is shown. So this is your normal artery, and then there is this plaque which is hindering the blood flow. So less blood will flow and reach the heart. Sometimes both A and B are present, and that leads to imbalance in myocardial oxygen demand and supply and leads to angina pectoris. Types of angina. So there are three types. One is classical or stable angina. Second is variant angina, which is also called as angina pectoris or vasoplastic angina. And third is unstable angina. Classic or stable. This type of angina attack is precipitated only by some activity. Meaning, if the oxygen demand of the body is normal, you're not doing any excessive physical activity, then the body is completely normal, the heart is functioning completely normally and it is able to meet the oxygen demand of the body. But when there is some excessive physical activity involved, such as running, exercising, anything, then that increased oxygen demand is not met. What is the underlying cause of this? Arteriosclerosis. All of you know what is arteriosclerosis of larger coronary arteries. So arteriosclerosis of larger coronary arteries. So plaque in your larger coronary arteries. So what will happen then? Whenever there is increased oxygen demand in conditions such as exercise or gymming, anything, that time blood flow fails to increase due to increased demand and it produces subendocardial crunch during diastole. What is it? So first sentence, your heart is pumping normally, the oxygen demand is completely normal and blood is flowing through the heart. Okay. Now what happens? We start exercising. So there is increased demand. Blood vessels dilate, but what happens? Because there is a plaque, less blood reaches. So that is one thing. Regarding subendocardial crunch during diastole, what happens when the heart is ischemic and it doesn't pump out blood effectively, then the end diastolic volume and pressure increases. What happens? This is normal heart. Okay, this is normal condition, not normal heart. This is your coronary artery which has a plaque or atheroma in it. So arteriosclerosis is a condition which is present. At normal conditions, when you are sitting at rest, okay, no exertion, nothing, what happens? These are the blood vessels which are supplying to your myocardium. This is your myocardium, okay, of left ventricle. So what happens? At the end of the diastole, some volume is entrapped here and that volume is given out during systole. This entire physiology we have discussed in congestive heart failure chapter. You can refer to that. When there is excessive work, that is increased oxygen demand, what happens is the heart is unable to pump efficiently, and there is more volume contained here, which exerts more pressure on the wall of the heart, and because of that pressure, again further damage occurs. So that is subendocardial crunch. Next type. So treatment aims will be primarily to reduce cardiac work and favorable distribution of blood flow to the ischemic area. Meaning, if this is the area which is ischemic, you tend to increase the blood flow to this area. Second, variant angina or angina pectoris or vasoplastic. This may occur in rest also. Underlying causes are vascular spasm, which is superimposed with arteriosclerosis, meaning the blood vessel do not dilate. Normal conditions in case of stable angina, there is a plaque, arteriosclerosis, but blood vessel dilates slightly, okay, which causes slight increase in the blood flow. But here what happens? The blood vessel shows spasm, it constricts, and that worsens the situation. So treatment aim would be preventing and relieving coronary vasospasm. And last is unstable angina, wherein there is rapid increase in duration and severity of the attack. Why it occurs? There is atherosclerotic plaque. This plaque ruptures at one single point of time. After the plaque ruptures, there are many pieces of the plaque. Those pieces starts flowing through the that location, and these pieces attract more and more platelets for deposition. And then this platelet deposition causes occlusion of coronary artery, and many times it is associated with coronary spasm also. So that is unstable angina. So these are the types. If I have to summarize, classic or stable angina, arteriosclerosis is a problem. Okay. So you can either reduce the cardiac work or do something related to blood supply. Variant angina, arteriosclerosis and vascular spasm. So vascular spasm is added thing which needs to be treated, and unstable angina is atherosclerotic plaque rupture. So here you can give antiplatelet agents. So basically what happens? All this leads to chronic reduction in blood supply. Okay. Once the blood supply is chronically reduced, that leads to ischemia and atrophy of cardiac muscle and fibrosis. Atrophy, reduction in the size of the cardiac muscle, and fibrosis. What is fibrosis? Replacement of parenchymatous, that is functional tissue with fibers. So imagine your muscles are replaced with fibers. Fibers cannot contract. And this leads to reduced myocardial contractility because there is less muscle mass, which can lead to congestive heart failure. It can also lead to damage to the conduction system of the heart, which will lead to arrhythmia. So this is all regarding the pathophysiology of angina pectoris, which you should know by now. So our treatment goals. So what will be our treatment goals? Treatment goals are restore the balance of oxygen supply and demand and to the myocardial tissue. So demand is by myocardial tissue, oxygen supply is again to the myocardial tissue. Vasodilation can be another treatment goal because vasospasm is also one of the problem which is involved. And when we talk about decreasing the workload of the heart, of course, we will always talk about decreasing the preload, afterload, and peripheral vascular resistance. The reference to this sentence can be found in congestive heart failure chapter. Please refer to that. So when I talk about drugs, they are classified as nitrates, beta blockers, calcium channel blockers, potassium channel openers, and others. Now, when I talk about this, nitrates are useful in aborting the attack instantly. And all rest of the agents are used for chronic prophylaxis to reduce the progression or to limit the progression of the disease. Now in this, you must be remembering nitrates and beta blockers are used for congestive heart failure also. So when I talk about nitrates, all organic nitrates share same action. They only differ in their time course, that is duration of action. The only major action is non-specific smooth muscle relaxation. It not only relaxes smooth muscles present in blood vessels, but it also relaxes smooth muscles present in bronchi, biliary tract, esophagus, everything. Okay. Effect on intestine, ureter, uterus is variable and insignificant. Cellular level MOA. How nitrates leads to release of nitric oxide, what it leads to at cellular level. That we have already discussed in CHF chapter. If a question is asked in this chapter also, from this chapter also, you will have to write the same MOA. So please refer to that chapter. So now when I talk about nitrates, how exactly they are useful in case of angina pectoris. So nitrates dilate veins more than arteries. So this is a point to be noted. So what will happen? Your veins are dilated more than your arteries. When veins are dilated more, this causes increase in pooling of the blood in veins. When more blood is pooled in veins, less blood returns to the heart. And that causes decrease in the preload. This preload decrease causes decrease in the intraventricular pressure. Why? Because ventricles are now having or containing less volume of blood. So that less volume will exert less pressure on the ventricular wall. So this causes decrease in the wall tension, ventricular wall tension, and ultimately when the tension on the ventricular wall decreases, the effort it takes to pump out the blood during systole will decrease. So basically, this decreases the workload and oxygen demand by the heart. So this is how it is going to help in angina. Secondly, afterload reduction. Though it dilates veins more than arteries, still there is arterial dilation which is present. Because the arteries dilate, it causes decrease in total peripheral resistance or vascular peripheral resistance, or it is also called as systemic peripheral resistance, or it is called as peripheral vascular resistance. So basically this resistance decreases and that decreases blood pressure, and this causes again reduction in the cardiac work due to decrease in aortic impedance. Impedance means resistance again. Okay, so this is basically afterload reduction. The connection between afterload and peripheral vascular resistance, again we have discussed at length in the congestive heart failure video. If you are not able to recall it here, please watch it again. Now, after discussing preload and afterload, I would like to discuss its side effect. Why? Because it is very much related to what we have discussed just now. If a very large dose of nitrate is given to a patient who can stand and who is in a standing position, what happens because of all the above effects which we have discussed, okay, which are ultimately leading to decrease in preload, decrease in afterload, decrease in blood pressure, it leads to reflex tachycardia. Why reflex tachycardia? Because sympathetic system gets activated whenever all these factors get reduced. So when there is reflex tachycardia, tachycardia leads to increase in the cardiac activity. What is tachycardia? Increase in the frequency and force of contraction of the heart. So basically your heart starts pumping at faster rate. So this is again what it is. It is increase in the cardiac activity, and this increase in cardiac activity again increases the cardiac workload, and angina may get worsen or get precipitated. Though you are giving these drugs to treat angina, because of this particular problem, your angina can get worsen. So what is the solution? Solution is very simple. Keep the patient in lying position. Do not allow the patient to stand, and allow the patient to raise foot. Now why this? Because when the patient is standing, the blood is pulled more to the limbs. More the blood is pulled to lower limbs, the venous return of the blood to the heart will decrease more and more. So you have to avoid that. So what you do? You keep the patient in lying position so blood can easily come back to heart. And again raising the foot will also help. Third effect of nitrates is redistribution of coronary flow. Nitrates relax bigger coronary arteries than arterioles, and this causes favorable distribution of blood flow to ischemic areas. How? I hope this image is clear and you are able to see. See, this is your larger coronary artery and these are your resistance vessels, the smaller ones. So what happens if you see this, the diameter, there is a spasm involved, vasospasm. Okay. And once you get nitrate, because nitrate has selective action or preferential action on the larger coronary artery, what has happened? This has dilated. Because this dilated, more and more blood start coming and then the blood supply is improved. So this is redistribution of coronary flow. So because of all these effects, nitrates are effective in aborting angina and are very effective against angina pectoris. So of course, when I talk about variant angina, what is the specific role of nitrates? Specific role of nitrates in variant angina. In variant angina, vasospasm was the problem, and just now we saw nitrates are capable of dilating the blood vessels. So dilator effect of larger coronary vessels works in variant angina. In classical angina, decrease in preload, decrease in afterload. So ultimately reduction in the cardiac work by action on the peripheral vasculature and increase blood supply to the ischemic area because of this effect. So both these effects become very nice and very favorable for the treatment of classical angina. Then heart and peripheral blood flow. There is no direct action on the heart. We have seen. See, everything is because of blood vessels dilation. Okay, though afterload, preload reduction is there, everything is because of dilation of blood vessels. So there is no direct effect on the heart. Peripheral vasculature, yes, it has effect. It dilates cutaneous vasculature, which causes flushing as a side effect. Plus, because of the dilatory effect, it causes decongestion of the lungs, that is by shifting the blood to systemic circulation. So that is specific role in angina. There is a concept of tolerance. All of you might be aware what is tolerance. So tolerance is initially, for example, I give X mg dose of nitrates to a patient and patient showed me 100% response, efficacy. Okay. After some time or after few days, I again give X mg dose only. I continue with the X mg dose, but I am only getting 80%. After that, I am getting 70% response. So reduction in the response percentage with the same dose over the time because of some physiological changes is in simple terms is tolerance. So when I talk about tolerance to nitrate, you have to remember these three words: aldehyde dehydrogenase, sulfhydryl groups, and oxidative stress. So basically, first you need to understand there are types of nitrodilators. So which are those types? Those which release nitric oxide spontaneously, for example, sodium nitroprusside, and organic nitrates that require enzymatic process to form nitric oxide in the body. So basically, nitric oxide formation is the key for the action of nitrodilators or nitrates. All organic nitrates require enzymatic conversion. So ultimately, they require some enzyme from our body to get activated, to get converted into nitric oxide. So when we talk about conversion of organic nitrates to nitric oxide, they do not release nitric oxide directly. Their nitrate group interacts with enzymes and intracellular sulfhydryl groups. See, I have written it here. So sulfhydryl group that reduces the nitrate group to nitric oxide. Or there is a requirement of S-nitrosothiol, which then is reduced to nitric oxide. So there is sulfhydryl group requirement for activation of nitrates. That is one point to remember. Another point, nitroglycerin can be denitrated by glutathione S transferase enzyme. So glutathione S transferase is required for activation of nitrates. Third point, a mitochondrial enzyme, aldehyde dehydrogenase, activates nitroglycerin and releases nitric oxide. So third point is aldehyde dehydrogenase is required for activation of nitric. So in very simple terms, students, aldehyde dehydrogenase, sulfhydryl group are required and glutathione S transferase. These are required for conversion of or activation of nitrates. Very simply. So can you guess now how tolerance will be developed? If there is less aldehyde dehydrogenase, If there is less sulfhydryl group in your body, what will happen? Nitrates won't get activated and they will not show 100% effect with the same dose. So with continuous exposure to nitrates, what happens is there is decrease in the tissue sulfhydryl groups, and this metabolism which is required for conversion of nitrate to nitric oxide decreases and you do not see 100% effect. There is depletion of aldehyde dehydrogenase. Again, no 100% result. Third mechanism is very interesting. There is increase in the oxidative stress because of the disease or because of some other reason. What will happen? The oxidative stress generate free radicals. So all these systems, sulfhydryl groups, aldehyde dehydrogenase, they are involved in reduction of free radicals also. So now there is a competition between free radicals and your organic nitrates for reduction. So again, the amount of organic nitrates undergoing reduction will be decreased in presence of oxidative stress. So again, this is all is leading to development of tolerance. But it can be very well monitored, or it can be very well avoided. The simple solution is have intermittent nitrate free period for the patient. Do not continue with the therapy for very long time. Now this will occur when, see, with sublingual use, there is no question. But when you are giving it orally or in term of patches, okay, in a form of patches, then the problem occurs because it is continuously releasing nitrodilators in the body. Okay. So this is the concept of tolerance of nitrates. Pharmacokinetics, organic nitrates absorption, they are lipid soluble, so very well absorbed from buccal mucosa, intestine and skin. Metabolism, all except isosorbide mononitrate undergo extensive and variable first pass metabolism in liver. They are rapidly denatrated by glutathione reductase and mitochondrial aldehyde dehydrogenase, which we discussed on the previous slide. If the nitrates are partly denatrated, the metabolites which are partly denatrated forms are less active, but they have longer half-life. Okay. Duration of action, the rate of absorption from the site of administration and rate of metabolism that governs the rate of metabolism. These two things govern the duration of action. Adverse effect, fullness of head, thrombing headache, degree of tolerance develops on continuous use, which we discussed in the previous slide. Flushing because of subcutaneous vasodilation, weakness, sweating, palpitation, dizziness, fainting, blood pressure lowering effect. Methemoglobinemia. Now what is methemoglobinemia? Nitrates when present causes increase in the amount of methemoglobin. Now you will have to recall that methemoglobin has less oxygen carrying capacity. If methemoglobin is present, the oxygen carrying capacity of the blood decreases. So that can lead to anemia. And rashes sometimes, but are rare. These are the adverse effects. Dependence, sudden withdrawal of nitrates is not preferred. What may happen is it can lead to spasm of coronary and peripheral blood vessels and myocardial infarction, which can lead to sudden death. So basically gradual withdrawal and substitution of another drug during withdrawal is very, very important. Substitution of another drug like beta blocker, etc. This is a summary of all the drugs which you can refer for writing the answer. Uses of organic nitrates or uses of nitrates. Of course, use in angina pectoris we have discussed. Acute coronary syndrome, that is sudden reduction or blockage of blood flow to the heart. Okay, that is called as acute coronary syndrome. So there also you can use nitrates because they cause increase in the blood flow, decrease in myocardial stress. They also inhibit coronary artery occlusion because it is dilating it. They are also useful in myocardial infarction with the aim of relieving chest pain, pulmonary decongestion, and limiting the area of necrosis by favorably altering the oxygen balance. So that also we have discussed, how it favorably redistributes the blood flow, if you remember this. So this is the gist. And lastly, yeah, CHF, congestive heart failure. The role of nitrates in congestive heart failure we have already discussed in congestive heart failure chapter. And very interesting use is cyanide poisoning. So basically what happens, see this. there is hemoglobin present. So you give sodium nitrite, which is nitrate. Sodium nitrite goes in the body, it increases methemoglobin level. Methemoglobin preferentially binds to cyanide. Cyanide is a poison. If methemoglobin is not there, what cyanide does? It binds to cytochrome oxidases and thus inhibits cellular respiration. And this is how it exerts its poisonous effect. So now because of sodium nitrite, methemoglobin level increases. This methemoglobin combines with cyanide. So the cyanide is unable to combine with cytochrome oxidase and then there is no further effect. So cyanide and methemoglobin complex is formed, which is called as cyanomethemoglobin. Now you also give sodium thiosulfate. Sodium thiosulfate causes conversion of cyanomethemoglobin into methemoglobin again plus sodium thiocyanate. Sodium thiocyanate can be excreted in urine and this is how nitrates help in cyanide poisoning. There are official antidotes for cyanide poisoning. So here we end our discussion about nitrates and here we end this particular video.